And now the last but not least presentation by Richard Jones. Richard Jones is the captain of the Atlas boat. So he's the, didn't you know? So we've been working together for 3 years. We didn't know each other at the beginning, and now are very good friends. So this is one advantage, one side effect of this journey. So he will be introducing the additional component, the new component, the regional synthesis, which is particularly interesting for decision makers and stakeholders. Thank you for being here, Richard.
So thank you, excuse me, thank you very much, Jose. And I can claim to be co-captain. I definitely cannot be claimed to be captain. Also, I would also like to add my deep appreciation at the support of the Spanish government and CSIC for supporting Jose and his team, his amazing team, who've been working on the Atlas and the interactive Atlas. It made our job immensely easier. We still work very hard, but we would never have been able to produce anything like we did. And as Jose mentioned in his talk, the ability to be able to go in and double check everything that was being produced from the report, looking at results in other chapters, it really helped with both the transparency and also the quality control on everything that went in across the whole report. So it was a massive, massive contribution to the Working Group 1 report, and I really want to just add my acknowledgement to that. So I'm going to say something about the summary results that are presented in the summary for policymakers, and then talk a little bit about how those can be explored a bit more in the regional synthesis component of the interactive atlas. So looking initially at some of the observed and future changes we're expecting in extreme events that Valerie alluded to at the beginning, expanding a bit more on this concept of climatic impact drivers, and then how those are going to be changing across all regions in the future, and then looking in a bit more detail about how you can explore those within the interactive atlas. I'd also just like to step back and say that in addition to being one of the coordinating lead authors on the atlas, I was part of the handshake team with Working Group 2, and this again speaks to this co-production activity that went on between the working groups and their stakeholders in developing the report, and that was very important when it comes to the definition of the climatic impact drivers, which I'll refer to a bit later. So this is one of the key summary figures in the summary for policymakers. So this is now looking at a quasi-geographical representation of the world. So now the world, those regions that you saw in map form in Valerie's and Jose's presentation are now represented by hexagons. The colour in those hexagons is where we have a clear trend in that extreme, and then the dots are where that trend has been attributed to human influence. So we're looking here at hot extremes at the top, and then heavy precipitation and agricultural and ecological drought. So this really backs up this result that all regions are already experiencing multiple changes and multiple changes in extremes. So there are other extremes which were explored within the report and are summarised in the summary of policymakers. So, for example, the occurrence of the most intense tropical cyclones is likely that is increased in the recent past. And also we're seeing clear human influence on compound extreme events. So, for example, concurrent heat waves and droughts, increase in fire weather, which we were talking about earlier, and compound flooding, and you will be able to explore aspects of this within the interactive atlas. So looking into the future for those extremes, the three that were in that previous figure were also explored in figure SPM6, where we're now looking at how the intensity and frequency of those have increased compared to pre-industrial up to present day, and then how those will continue to increase. The intensity and the frequency will continue to increase in the future, really underpinning this idea that every additional fraction of warming leads to further increases in intensity and frequency of extreme events. So every single bit of warming matters, as the IPCC Secretary was mentioning earlier in his presentation. So now on to the climatic impact drivers, and the really key point about these aspects of the climate system is that we are looking at those because they are relevant to impacts and they're relevant to risk assessment. So we developed, this was mainly an effort of Chapter 12 in the report, a whole suite of 30 of these climatic impact drivers relevant to land and coastal systems under these different categories: heat and cold, wet and dry, wind, snow and ice, coastal and oceanic and other. And these were very specifically focused on because they were relevant to the Working Group 2 report and relevant to all the stakeholders who are interested in the implications of climate change and finding the solutions in terms of risk assessment, managing the risks and adaptation. So within the summary for policymakers, what we did was we collated all of the information that the underlying report had generated on these climatic impact drivers across all of the regions. And this is the images here from figure SPM9, which is where we're showing how many regions did each of those climatic impact drivers expected to change in the future with either medium or high confidence. And what you'll see here is that for certain of the groups of the classes of climatic impact drivers, almost all regions will see changes. And for some of the others, like the wet and dry and the wind, you will see either increases in some cases or decreases, not necessarily all regions, but many regions being implicated. And the two headline results from this figure are that in almost all regions, 96% of regions, essentially all land regions apart from Antarctica, there will be changes in at least 10 of these climatic impact drivers, and there will be more than half of the regions where 15 of these will be expected to change in the future. So this really underpins this idea that all regions of the world are being and will continue to be affected in multiple, and often very different ways. Now, turning to the interactive atlas, each of these bars here represents essentially a geographical pattern of changes we are expecting in the future, and this is where we can these are the features that we can explore within the interactive atlas. So the first of the options in terms of regional synthesis is to look at that geographical distribution of how that climatic impact driver will change in the future. And here we're focusing on fire weather. And what you're seeing with the coloured areas are where the changes which are in purple, light or dark purple, where they would increase with either medium or high confidence. The white areas are where the changes are where we have low confidence in the direction of change, and the grey areas, essentially Antarctica here, again, is where that CID is not broadly relevant. Other views that you can get within the interactive atlas, if you want to explore your particular region, then you can go to the regions view and you can select a region. Here we're looking at West Southern Africa, and that will list all of the climatic impact drivers which are expected to change in the future, and that's the middle column of the image, along with whether we have evidence of observed changes and whether those observed changes can be attributed to human activity. So there's a whole wealth of information here about what is happening in your particular region of interest, and we're listing here just those climatic impact drivers that are expected to change in the future, and this really underpins this idea that it's multiple. And also they're different, because when you then turn to another region, and here we're looking here at Southwest and South America, you'll see that there are different sets of changes. So this really allows you to explore all of the changes that are happening in a particular region. The final view that you have with the regional synthesis is being able to use this hexagon representation of the world, and then see for a selection of up to 6 climatic impact drivers the expected changes in those. So in this example here, we're looking at extreme heat, heavy precipitation, a couple of drought metrics, and fire weather and tropical cyclones. Is your region going to be hit in the future by all of these changes? And this gives you the ability to do that. And if, when you're in the interactive atlas, you hover your mouse across one of those regions, it brings up for that region the list of the changes that are expected in the future. So that's the final of the views that you get in the regional synthesis. So thank you for your attention, and I think we now go to Q&A. Jose, thank you very much.